On July 28, 2016, archaeological monitoring was underway at St Mary's Church in Kilkenny, Ireland. The historic building was being transformed into the Medieval Mile Museum, a project designed to preserve and display the city's remarkable medieval heritage. The work required a service trench. In a modern building, such an excavation might reveal pipes, foundations, or disturbed soil. At St Mary's, every layer carried the possibility of something far older. Archaeologists watched carefully as the ground was opened. Then human remains appeared. The discovery halted routine construction and transformed the trench into a controlled archaeological excavation. 4 skeletons were uncovered. They were not recent burials. Their position, context, and association with the historic church indicated that they belonged to Kilkenny's medieval dead. The discovery was surprising, but it was not entirely unexpected. For centuries, churches were more than places of worship. They were centers of community life, markers of status, and sacred ground for burial. Important families often wanted their dead placed as close as possible to the altar, the church walls, or consecrated ground. But the 4 individuals in the trench had lost almost everything that once identified them. Their clothing had vanished, their names were absent, their homes had disappeared or changed beyond recognition. What remained was written in bone. Kilkenny grew into one of medieval Ireland's most important urban centres. Following the Anglo-Norman expansion, the settlement developed around its castle, churches, market streets, and fortified boundaries. The city's medieval form reflected power, commerce, and religion. St Mary's became one of its principal parish churches. The building stood close to the lives of merchants, craftspeople, civic leaders, and wealthy urban families. Generations worshipped there. Marriages were witnessed beneath its roof. Funeral services passed through its doors, and the dead were placed within and around its sacred ground. Historical burial traditions preserved at the site connect St Mary's with many of Kilkenny's prominent civic families, including the Archer, Shee, Roth, Butler, Bryan, Langton, and other names associated with the city's political and commercial history. But proximity to the church could reflect more than faith. Burial location sometimes communicated identity and social standing. A grave inside a church or near an important sacred space could demonstrate wealth, influence, or a family's relationship with the parish. Other members of the community were buried farther away, sometimes in simpler graves without permanent monuments. Over hundreds of years, markers weathered, floors changed, and new burials disturbed older ones. Eventually, entire generations disappeared beneath later construction. The 4 skeletons discovered in 2016 were therefore not merely archaeological objects. They represented individuals who once occupied a specific place within the social structure of medieval Kilkenny. The challenge was determining what that place had been. Archaeology does not begin by asking who a skeleton resembles. It begins with context. Researchers document the orientation of the grave, its depth, surrounding soil, nearby structures, and the position of every surviving bone. A body buried carefully on its back may indicate a formal Christian burial. The direction in which it was laid can help researchers understand religious customs. Evidence of a coffin, shroud pin, or grave structure can suggest how the burial was prepared. The skeleton itself can then reveal biological information. The pelvis and skull may help estimate sex. The development and wear of teeth can contribute to an age range. Long bones provide clues about height. Healed fractures record earlier injuries. Joint damage may reveal years of physical labor. Teeth can preserve evidence of diet, childhood stress, and disease. Yet these methods rarely return a person's name. They create a biological profile, a careful reconstruction of one human life without pretending that every uncertainty has been solved. The individuals from St. Mary's were later placed at the centre of an exhibition exploring medieval life in Kilkenny. Their remains helped researchers and visitors examine how ordinary people experienced health, work, nutrition, and death. The exhibition was not built around a sensational claim that the graves contained kings or murder victims. Its power came from something more intimate. These bones belonged to people who had walked the same streets that still survive in modern Kilkenny. They had heard bells from St. Mary's. They had lived through winters, illnesses, and food shortages. They had watched children grow. They may have worked in markets only minutes from the church. Then their individual stories vanished from written history. Only their bodies remained. Medieval Kilkenny was a thriving city, but urban life carried danger. Clean drinking water could not always be guaranteed. Waste disposal was limited. Open fires filled homes with smoke. Infectious diseases spread without modern medicine. A small wound could become fatal. Childbirth posed severe risks. Poor harvests affected nutrition, while repeated physical labor damaged backs, knees, shoulders, and hands. The bones of medieval populations frequently preserve signs of these pressures. Researchers may find enamel defects caused when childhood illness interrupted tooth formation. They may identify arthritis created by years of repetitive movement. Dental decay can indicate changing diets and access to carbohydrates. Bone infections can reveal injuries that the body fought for months or years. But caution is essential. A mark on a skeleton does not automatically reveal a dramatic cause of death. Many diseases affect soft tissue and leave no trace on bone. A person may show several healed injuries, yet die from an illness that becomes archaeologically invisible. This limitation is central to the mystery beneath St. Mary's. The remains can reveal portions of a biography. They may show age, physical stress, and long-term disease. But unless there is clear trauma or recoverable biological evidence, they may never disclose precisely how someone died. Archaeology often produces extraordinary detail without delivering a complete ending. It can tell us that a person worked hard, that they survived childhood illness, that an injury healed, that they consumed a particular diet, but their final day may remain silent. The position of the burials raises the question at the center of this investigation. Why were these particular people placed at St. Mary's? The simplest answer is that the church and its surrounding cemetery served generations of Kilkenny residents, but not every grave occupied an equal location. Some burials were positioned near walls, chapels, monuments, or family plots. Wealthier families could commission elaborate tombs and carved memorials. Those without money might receive graves marked only by wood, earth, or temporary symbols. Once those markers decayed, the exact location could be forgotten. A later grave might cut through an earlier burial. Construction could move bones from their original position. Floor replacement could seal graves beneath stone. Centuries later, an apparently empty trench might pass through a crowded cemetery. No verified evidence has shown that the 4 individuals were secretly murdered or deliberately concealed. Their discovery is consistent with the long burial history of a medieval church. That reality may be less sensational than a hidden crime, but it is historically more important. The trench revealed how completely a city can grow over its own dead. People who once possessed names, relationships, and reputations became an anonymous archaeological layer. The 4 discovered skeletons represented only the ground disturbed by one controlled area of work. They do not necessarily represent the full number of people buried at St. Mary's. Centuries of burial activity may have left additional graves beneath the building and its surroundings. Ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive methods can sometimes detect structural anomalies without opening the Earth, but even modern technology has limits. The only certainty is that the known discoveries form part of a much larger sacred landscape that may never be fully uncovered. St. Mary's is associated with generations of Kilkenny's influential civic families. Their carved tombs and memorials survive as evidence of a prosperous urban society. These monuments preserve names because wealth could turn memory into stone. But the newly uncovered skeletons presented a different problem. Without an inscribed coffin plate or secure documentary link, assigning a famous name would be speculation. Even if a grave lay close to a known family monument, proximity alone would not prove identity. Researchers must resist the temptation to convert anonymous bones into celebrated historical figures simply because a dramatic identification attracts attention. That contrast reveals a deeper historical inequality. The lives of rulers, merchants, and powerful families were recorded in documents. Ordinary laborers often entered history only through taxes, court disputes, or burial registers, if records survived at all. Archaeology can restore part of what written history overlooked. A skeleton cannot tell us its name. But it can remind us that a city's history was created by far more people than the few whose names appear on monuments. The discovery occurred during the transformation of St. Mary's into the Medieval Mile Museum, a project that created a place where archaeological material, carved tombs, and the stories of medieval Kilkenny could be interpreted together. Instead of concealing the discovery, researchers used it to deepen public understanding of the site. By 2019, an exhibition centered on human remains discovered during the 2016 work was revealing aspects of medieval life to visitors. The confirmed story begins not with murder, treasure, or conspiracy, but with construction, with 4 forgotten people returning to view after centuries of silence, their bones quietly carrying the weight of an entire city's hidden past.